Asher coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Welcome to the video. I am not alone today, guys. I'm collab happy here recently on the channel, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Saph, one of the brightest minds in Raid Shadow Legends from HH Gaming Network. Saph, welcome back to the channel, man. How you doing?
Cheers. Thanks for having me. I'm doing good. I am fresh off of, I think, like a 6-hour stream last night doing heavy math.
Heavy math.
I don't know how bright I am.
Get excited, guys.
I don't know how bright this. We love a bit of math. We love a spreadsheet.
Well, this is exactly why I brought you on, man, because I wanted to make a video for a long time about masteries. And honestly, masteries sounds like this video is probably not going to do very well, like view-wise, but I don't care.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
There's so much confusion. You know, even someone who's been playing the game for years, as we found out off air, like both of us still don't understand the nuances of every mastery in the game. And honestly, it's because like half the things in the game, not to like throw shade at Plarium randomly here, but like it's confusing oftentimes. So there's a lot to talk about. I just kind of want to jump into it here. We're really going to talk about each of the trees. We're going to talk about some of our favorite and most underutilized masteries in the game. Let me just get a clean slate here. There we go. And we're also going to talk about like choices between some of these masteries that are still kind of confusing. So I want to start, Saph, by just talking about the most confusing mastery I think in the game. And that is a little guy, a little really lesser known tier 6 mastery called Oppressor. This is really confusing. Not that I've never used it. I have used it. I don't know if it was a good choice or not, because it's impossible to figure out to me. Increase the turn meter fill rate by 2.5% for each debuff cast by this champion. Stacks up to 10%. So like, obviously the way it reads, it's obvious. You land a debuff, you can quickly stack up to 10%, whether you're doing it on all one AoE attack or even just landing a few debuffs in a longer battle, you'll quickly get up to that 10%. But it's a turn meter fill rate. Like, what the hell does that mean, man?
That's it. I mean, when we were talking about this, I was like, oh, the only champion that I know that's ever taken advantage of this is Richtoff the Bold when he was soloing Dragon 20 back in the day before we had like a billion stats. And it's just one of those things that you go, well, I'll just take the Axie, right? I don't really care about this. But when we actually read this, it's like the word rate, and for each active debuff, it kind of suggests that it's like, you know, the default that someone would go is, oh, I just get like a bit of turn meter every time I debuff. That sounds like okay, but it's only 2.5%. It's nothing crazy. But actually the word rate and active, we had a little look, and it seems to be that it's not weird, giving you turn meter. Yeah. No, it's not giving you turn meter. It's basically improving the quality of the turn meter fill. Now, we don't know, because I haven't tested this, because I didn't even realize this, whether that is affecting whenever you fill your turn meter, whether that be through like, you know, taking a turn, like as your turn meter increases, or whether the
course of your turn meter filling up to take a turn,
or whether it's just turn meter fill. But it seems to improve the quality, a bit like that Jintoro passive that we all know breaks our our clan boss teams, where every time he gets turn meter, it's 50% stronger. This is doing basically a similar effect, but it's interesting because if you think about it, like you said, if you've got a 2 debuffer like a Stag Knight, and you've got an enemy wave of 5, well, that's 10% in one ability. So is he then getting 10% more turn meter every single time he ticks, every single time he gets turn meter fill? It's actually kind of powerful when you think about it like that.
Yeah, and think about like a longer duration battle, right? Like the classic clan boss or whatever, right? Classic clan boss. Think about a debuff extender will allow the debuff to never expire. And then you've just got a basically the amount of time it takes to your turn meter to get to full is 10% faster every time. Is that?
Wow. You just wrinkled my brain, man.
It's so confusing to me.
Well, you need, actually, I got it wrong. I was thinking 5 enemies. You only actually need 4 debuffs, right? 2, 5. Yeah, so like you don't even need like that much of a debuffer as any debuffer, really, any AoE. So in that instance, as long as you have
poisons,
if you have someone like Ares, for example, and she has toxic sets, you get there pretty quickly, right? And you might need to just make sure you get there in enough time. You've got to debuff it pretty quickly in a clan boss, but if you can extend that, then everyone gets 10% more turn meter. That's kind of crazy. I mean, I don't know if you'd sacrifice War Master, which is what I'm sure all the comments are like saying, why would you take away War Master? But
no,
certainly in places like Hydra, where taking turns is more important than necessarily dealing damage half the time, you want to be able to keep killing things or unlock those people from the heads, or get that provoke back on before you fail. It's interesting.
It is. This is like the only one out of every single mastery of the game that neither of us fully understands exactly, because you looked again into the back end and it's still not clear, like the way they code this or whatever,
Yeah, it's basically one of two things. Either it's just when you fill a turn meter, so like Arbiter's A3 when you boost turn meter. Either it's that, or it's doing it anytime a turn meter bar is filled, which it could be like when every time champions take a turn, everyone's turn meter bar gets filled. So that's the two possibilities.
I read it the latter. Yeah.
I need to take it away and kind of like do some crazy math where it's like get it in a spreadsheet, figure out the tick rates, and then figure out what happens when I have one debuff, two, figure out all the different nuances to actually almost like reverse engineer what it's doing to confirm it. Because from the code, we can't really get any sort of clarity as to which one it's doing. Okay. So it could be interesting, this one.
Yeah, you guys let us know in the comments what you think, and if you ever use Oppressor, we'd love to hear from you guys. Saph, let's just start with his tier 6s, and then we'll talk about some of our favorites and more niche and really underrated and misunderstood out of all like the tier 1 to 5 masteries in each tree. So, I mean, obviously Eagle Eye is super obvious, so I don't think we need to talk about it. You get 50 accuracy. I think it's a pretty popular choice, especially like in arena and stuff like that. Oppressor, we've already talked about. Timely intervention, like for me, this has always been like a reviver or really good support mastery, and kind of limited to that. Do you have the same opinion on it?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think it'll be in situations where it's like I've got a hero that I don't mind getting to 1% HP. Like if you think like a Sand Devil, where you have like that Godseeker and Neri kind of thing, or those sorts of scenarios is probably where you'd want to use this, where like the hero, if it drops below low health, it doesn't really matter. The only thing you've got to be careful with this, obviously, is will the speed boost break your speed tunes? That's the only. True. But definitely, like the number one usage for this is like a revive type champion, or even it doesn't have to be a reviver, a champion that you need to get a turn in any content piece. So if you want to get your cleanser to jump ahead of the queue, then potentially this is really good for that arena setting. If they don't need to land debuffs, if they don't need to necessarily resist anything, then you start running out of options pretty quickly of what to pick, considering the other ones, some of them don't stack.
True. And, even on an unkillable team where everybody's, to your point, everybody's HP is going to drop below 25%. Well, you're going to get a big boost, and no one's going to be dead. Okay. Elixir of Life. Personally, I only use Elixir of Life if I, have somebody on a bolster or a shield set, or someone I'm really just trying to min-max HP for I don't know, maybe like a Marichka or something, or a Wither the Crown, someone who does a lot of heals based on their own HP or something like that. Is that you the same way, kind of?
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't use it a lot.
The problem is the stat burden of it compared to other things is not very, very good. If you think in terms of like how HP balance is,
you get half a banner, low. Not even.
Yeah, like if you think like I think HP can roll like, I have some amulets that have got like 1500 on substats.
Yeah,
so it's
and
like
now with Ascension too, you're like, dude, I can just get this off a couple Ascensions,
Yeah, it's just you don't get as much bang for your buck when you compare it to something like the 50 accuracy or the 50 resistance, or even things like Timely and the effect. So it's always like, if the only one that I've ever used it on is Godseeker and Aryan Sand Devil, because I don't really care about resistance. She's not landing debuffs.
Yep.
I don't really want to take the turn meter boosting, and all the rest of these options. I don't want Warmaster because obviously the Sand Devil counter would be a disaster. So you're kind of left with, well, all of the other options are terrible, so I'll just take more health.
That's kind of the move. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Unshakable, moving over to the defensive tree. For me, this is kind of an arena or very, very niche PvE mastery. What about you?
Yeah, the main problem is if you have a rank 5 ascended champion now, this is basically less than that. So that's
true.
It feels like the master. Some of these numbers need a little bit of a
buff.
A little bit of a reality check based on where you're getting things these days. But you're normally taking it on. Again, it's probably like an option of either I've got something that is already in my team, or I don't really need anything else. And then it's like the better thing over the HP. It's like the worst possible option. But sometimes it's really good if you want to like really truly index into like resistance. But as you said, there's like an arena niche, and it's only some arena champions you do that to as well.
And nowadays too, like you're gonna need whatever 800 plus resistance in the end game, and like this is not going to make a massive impact on that. But I do use it certainly more than a lot of these other ones that we spoken about earlier. With all that said, how about Fearsome Presence? I mean,
I'm beginning to feel left out.
Well, you go first now. You can start going first. Fearsome Presence.
The amount of champions I've put Fearsome Presence on for the cursed city of Sintranos lately is it's a painful experience.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about just trying to reduce the RNG essentially, and that's what Fearsome Presence does. The sacrifice is damage, but it reduces the RNG. So if you bring in someone who doesn't need to do damage, then it's pretty good. I mean, it does work with polymorph, but again, like I don't really know. Like you would probably take it if you didn't want anything else for polymorph, but it's only 5% more. You're already getting a pretty good chance. Especially with the new polymorph, you really need to be like a rank 6 to make the new polymorph really work, like a rank 5, rank 6. Otherwise, it's just not worth it. But yeah, I mean, it's incredibly good for anyone who's running stun sets. It's incredibly good for anyone whose job is to crowd control, essentially. So.
Sounds good. And just like as a note on Fearsome Presence, whenever I get Fearsome Presence, I just make it a point 100% to pick up Harvest Despair, because you're going to be placing your stuns and you'll have a higher chance, and you might as well get a 60% leech in there as well, right? So I think those two go hand in hand. Like I'll never get one without the other.
My favorite thing with Harvest Despair is Akimtum. So you take Akimtum, you put War Master on him, and you put him in a stun set. And then his passive, because it's coded as a actual damage dealing effect rather than a poison, when one poison activates on one enemy, all other hexed enemies take damage equal to that one poison, but as direct damage. So it triggers the War Master to deal damage. It triggers a sunset, and then because you've got Harvest Despair, you get leech, so it heals him back every single time, because the damage is actually
I didn't even know
direct.
that. Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool.
It's even more crazy now with Rathalos, because it's coded as an AoE effect. You can take advantage of the 4-piece Rathalos set, so you get Turn Meter every time a poison activates as well.
What do you think of the Rathalos set, by the way? I think it's crazy good. What do you think?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out how the 9-piece bonus works. Keep an eye out for a video on that. It is
okay.
The word that comes to mind is a cluster.
Sure.
It doesn't make sense.
Who cares?
I want to give a big shout out to DeGreer, who's like one of the top players in the game, and he messaged me this. He said basically, I'm trying to get my entire Discord in here, but he put Garrel in there. She did 477 million in Nightmare in the Rathalos set, and he's like, just want to let you know how broken this is. So
I have Cupidus in it right now.
Oh yeah,
I was lucky. I was nice. I wonder what the best Sacred Order champion is I can put an AoE bonus damage in effect. And I was like, oh, I've got Cupidus. Oh, I've got 9 out of 9. It's very weird, and it does matter for what we're having a conversation of when we get to the offense tree. Like we can revisit that very briefly on that, because there is a thing going on with that with one of the masters over there. But yeah, the Duracell Bunny build, we call it in Akimtum, which is basically like stun set Rathalos, War Master with Harvest Despair. He basically full heals himself and gets 20% turn meter every single time a poison activates. That's bonkers.
Nuts. I gotta try that out. That's cool.
Bonkers fun.
Okay, Bulwark. It decreases all damage all allies receive by 5%. The champion will receive that damage instead. To me, this is kind of like a mediocre tier 6 mastery, but not awful. I use it with like a guardian in conjunction with a guardian set or an ally protector who's already mitigating a lot of damage, and just build them like super tanky and just get a little bit on top. And I usually try to pair it with like selfless defense to mitigate even more damage, or selfless defender. What about you? How do you feel about Bulwark?
It's actually probably more value than you would imagine, because it works exactly like Ally Protect. It's applying before critical damage can be applied. So in that sense, if you're trying to keep your team alive in Arena, if you take Guardian, that's an Ally Protection effect. If you take Ally Protection and you take Bulwark, like you're severely reducing the amount of critical damage that the enemy can apply to a single target, because essentially you've taken 50%, then you've taken 10%, then you've taken another 5%. So what's left of that damage is the only thing that can be multiplied by critical damage. So it actually is doing probably more than 5% when you realize it.
That's a good point. This is why we had you on, Saph. I like this.
It's actually really good. But again, the key thing is it only works on one champion. So you don't want to have more than one in a team, because if you have more than one in a team, it's only ever going to work on one, and it normally works on the one in the highest team order. So if you have like bulwark on your leader and bulwark on your fourth champion, the fourth champion is never going to...
Position-wise, sure.
It's wasted. It doesn't do
anything. Who's your favorite bulwark champion? I guess mine is like probably an Ursaga because her passive already has the more damage mitigation. You can just make this massive beast of a tank, right?
Yeah, Isuga Warcaller is very good. Probably like some tank revive supports, you know, someone a bit like Marichka. You don't really care if she dies. You know, you could take the resistance, obviously, but she's going to buff her own resistance eventually where she keeps cleaning. You don't really care if she dies because if she dies, she revives everyone anyway and she'll get revived. So you don't really mind. So just being able to keep your team alive and make them ghost is a pretty good option. Yeah, basically the Ursuga Warcaller role. Anyone who's there just to basically be a sort of a damage soak, Krisk, you know, any ally protector. I did at one point do some crazy math.
Trying to pick up like some epics that people might want to consider. Yeah.
I did do some crazy math at one point to see if it was better than War Master and Clan Boss, and it kind of produced like mid results. It's like it didn't really produce anything like significantly better than just having a War Master on that tank. But it's certainly, when you start layering like multiple Guardian sets with ally protection and bulwark, it gets very complicated. But yeah, very powerful to try and mitigate the critical damage or basically clan boss damage multiplication, because it's doing the exact same thing. It'll take the damage before the damage is multiplied, which is a big deal.
Okay, that's a good note there. Iron Skin, I kind of feel the same about this as Elixir of Life. How about you?
Yeah, the defense, like if you're picking defense, the other defense trees are almost like more valuable. Yeah, like I'd rather take a protection for my team than just 200 defense, especially in the context of arena where defense is rather low value to some extent. Yep. Just because of the volume of ignore defense that people can get now on their champions, and some of the powerful, you know, Dorgids, for example, can just do true damage. Defense is like rather worthless at that point. So yeah, I agree. It's like the worst of, like, if you just don't really care, if you're not stunning, you don't really care about resisting, and there's no one to be protected, then maybe you just get an extra 200 defense, right? All right. I agree. Here's the moment of truth, the ever so confusing offense tier 6 masteries, only because I think that intuitively we all like have an idea of when to use each, but then there's a lot of like niche scenarios, a lot, right? So I kind of want to start like with the most basic. Like I think that everybody's kind of taught from an early time in Raid that a single or a dual hitter on your A1 go War Master, a triple or more go Giant Slayer. Let's just talk about that. Does that still hold true in all situations? And what would be the exceptions to the rule, right? I can think of a few, but I want to hear from you. You're the expert. So the basic principle with Giant Slayer versus War Master is if you take their skill sets, like their A1, their A2, and their A3, you take the number of attacks total, and then you divide that between the total attacks, right? So for example, if I've got a triple hit A3, a single A2, and a single A1, it's 1 + 1 + 3 divided by 3. That will give you then an average hit rate. So I think that was like 5 divided by 3. So it's like 2 point something or something like that. If that average is less than 2, then you always go War Master. If it's averaging more than 2.5, well, if it averages less than 2, then you go War Master. If it's about 2 to 2.5, then War Master and Giant Slayer will kind of break even. The difference is that Giant Slayer could potentially roll higher if you get lucky, but it also could potentially roll lower if you get unlucky, right? Because it's high risk, high reward, but that makes sense getting the average though. Yeah, if you're pushing for those records. Yeah. What about if you're above 2.5, Giant Slayer every single time. Does it change anything? Do you still use the exact same equation if it's a champion with a single target A1 and like, let's just say 2 quad A2 and A3s? I don't even know if there's a champion like that, but I know there's some that are kind of close. Like what if they have 3 or 4 time hitters, but only a 1 on the A1? It gets kind of murky because they're using their A1 more often, you know, throughout the duration of the battle. So how do you handle that situation? So you could just do sort of a skill rotation back to the start of the rotation, right? So for example, if you've got a 4-turn cooldown A3, a 4-turn cooldown A2, and a 1-turn cooldown, you're going to go A3, A2, A1, A1. So you basically then, instead of doing what I just did before, which is like add them up divided by 3, I would take 4 + 4 + 1 + 1 divided by 4. So you just find the rotation you want to test it over,
Yep.
and then you divide it, and then it's just that basic principle. If it's below 2, War Master. If it's 2 to 2.5, it's your choice, Giant Slayer, War Master. If it's above 2.5, Giant Slayer.
Perfect.
So you just set up the rotation depending on how you want it to go.
Clear
Same
enough.
thing if you've got like counterattacks, ally attacks, just add an additional one in and divide it amongst the total rotation of your attacks.
Okay. Flawless execution. When, if ever, are you going with flawless execution over the other 3?
Flawless is for consistency. That's the way that I've always entertained it. So, for example, if you're using Cold Heart in Dragon or Spider, you don't really want to take Helm Smasher because it's inconsistent, right? If you're depending on the damage to kill the boss and you're on the break point where if I get Helm Smasher, I kill it. If I don't get Helm Smasher, I don't always kill it. Then that inconsistency will be the bane of your life and you'll hate every second of it. I always pick Flawless in those situations because it's like I get 20% every single time consistently all the time. That's when I would go towards Flawless. You can do it as well if you don't care for Ignore Defense. So like if there's some champions, like Jorgid is a bit of a question mark. But like I don't know, Mortu Macabre. Yes, like Mortu Macabre, for example, is actually 0 value when you take in Helm Smasher because
Real Huntsman A3 or something, Blood Gorged A3. Like those, I guess those are the only abilities I think in the game that have 100% built-in ignore defense all the time.
Yeah, some people obviously would jump to Shamael for an arena build.
Yep.
Absolutely. Because the thing is, War Master and Giant Slayer is more of a PvE damage multiplier. And if you're fighting lots of like low HP targets in arena or stuff like that, then you're not going to get any value out of that because 10% of like what is it? Most heroes these days, most champions, like 80,000 to 90,000, unless you're in the top tier metas, like top tier arenas, then it's crazy. But like if you think 8,000 damage is what a War Master would do, you're probably going to get more value out of just having Flawless in that situation because you just can't scale it enough.
Yep.
So yeah, those sorts of situations where you're not worried about defense and like Mortu is a very good example because his A1 and his A2 is just very weak in general, right? It's not the greatest in the world. We know HP-based damage dealers are not the best, where you really just want to make sure that peril knocks someone out.
As hard. Yeah. And
So
you're
that's
ignoring 100% defense, so that would be okay.
Yeah.
Helm Smasher, man. So I think we kind of know. First of all, I want to ask you kind of a niche question that you would be probably the one to ask about is the way this is written, have 50% chance to ignore 25% of the target's defense. To me, I've never even said this on a video ever here because it seems like a dumb question, but you have the answer and it doesn't seem like it actually happens this way. Like to me, I feel like it's more consistent, I would say, than 50% of the time. I don't feel like, every time I attack, didn't proc there, proc there, blah, blah, blah. Like to me, it feels like it's actually a level of consistency that doesn't reflect the 50% chance. How does it actually work in the game? Am I just...
I think it's going to be a little bit like the fear situation, right? It's confirmation bias. Whenever I've got fear on an enemy, it never works. When it's on me, it always works.
The peril of Mortu Macabre again.
Exactly, right? If I'm attacking the peril Mortu Macabre, you guarantee you sneeze on it, it's activated. Where mine can take like 12 hits, and we're still waiting for the peril. So the key thing to note, though, it is doing it per individual attack, not per skill, right? So it's not rolling. It's not like what Polymorph is doing now. Polymorph basically goes, I debuff an enemy with an ability, I have one roll. Doesn't matter how many different debuffs I do, it doesn't matter how many buffs I remove, it's one roll. It's one flat roll. This is actually doing it based on every single hit. So for example, if you have someone like a Zenogre Blade Master, it will re-roll this every single time she does an attack.
Got you.
So it's probably like you can kind of do like the reverse psychology of this and kind of go like, well, okay, it's 50% chance that I'm going to do it, but actually, what's the chance of at least one of them doing it? Well, 50 by 50 by 50. That's I've got a pretty good chance that one of them is going to happen every single time. It's a bit. Phantom Touch works exactly the same way like this. Phantom Touch is rolled per attack. So if you have like a 5-star Phantom Touch, you have like a 99.19% chance that you will activate Phantom Touch, even though it's only 70% chance on a 4-hitter. That's why a 5-star Neldor is huge with Phantom Touch. It almost is guaranteed. It's always going to happen because it's per attack. So that's probably why you're feeling it, because it's rolling per attack. So sometimes you look at it and go, wow, it's happening every single time, because you just roll in the dice more opportunities. But it is doing it on a 50%. I can confirm. It's what it says it's doing is what it's doing.
So let me ask you this. In a Hydra, should I go Helm Smasher on my nukers? Should I go War Master on my nukers?
Well, this is very timely because last night on stream, I spent about an hour and a half giving everyone a math lesson, which I was told.
Thank you, because honestly, I don't know the answer. I really don't. I think I have a hunch, but I have no idea. You know, I go War Master, honestly. I'm not sure if it's right or wrong, but yeah.
Exactly. So we all know War Master is capped at 50,000 in Hydra. So there's a limit of how much you can do. Bit of a vague thing what happens with decapitation because it seems to do more than 50,000, even though that I know max HP can't exceed 10% even in decapitation. It's a bit weird. But essentially, I'm holding the principle that War Master is 50,000 in Hydra across the board. So really what you want to know is if I take Helm Smasher, will I do more than 50,000 damage if I don't take Helm Smasher, right? Because War Master's 60%, Helm Smasher's 50%, so they're pretty much the same chance. And it really comes down to how much you invest in Ignore Defense. If you just take Helm Smasher and you're in Relentless, it's not worth it. You lose damage because you're not getting enough Ignore Defense.
Okay.
But if you take your area bonus, take lethal. I mean, if you go absolutely crazy, and this is where we will get into silly numbers, if you now take Merciless 6 pieces, if you have accessories for it, that gives you 35% Ignore Defense. You compare that with a Cruel set to get you to 40%. Then you take your area bonuses, that gets you to 60%. Then you are like only 40% away from doing true damage.
Go Helm Smasher. Yeah.
So Helm Smasher on top of that will get you to
65. Were you at 40? Yeah.
We needed 40%, so that'll get you to 15% left. And there's a wonderful little blessing called Crushing Rend. Will give you 31% Ignore Defense. So taking Helm Smasher will get you to true damage.
True damage. Okay.
And when you take into account someone like Trunder, who does damage based off the first hit, if you A2 ahead with Trunder's A2 and you've got Helm Smasher, 6-star Crushing Rend, and you also have this lethal combo, you don't need necessarily Merciless and Cruel, but Merciless, which is 35%, that A2 will do true damage, which means the corresponding damage is going to do 60% of a true damage hit, and it's obnoxiously big. It's huge.
Okay. So this is actually really good stuff. I didn't know this. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world, but I wasn't, I never tried this. But so if you're ready to, so it would behoove players out there. Let's just say you're running like Cupidus or something, right? And you have two choices. You can either build him just in Relentless gear or whatever and go War Master. Or you can try to basically min-max to try to get as close as you possibly can to true damage and invest totally. And that would be the better result if you have the gear and the blessings and everything to make it happen.
Yeah, so there is some context here for early to mid-game players, War Master or Giant Set. There's no question, right? Because it is all about how much you can scale the base damage and how much you can scale your stats. If you are, maybe you don't have very good lethal gear yet, savage gear, whatnot, War Master's consistent. It doesn't require you to build it. It's going to do the same damage. As long as you put decreased defense and weaken, it's like when we first built our first clan boss teams. We all go, wow, we got tier 6 masteries. We do so much more damage. But then the moment you actually get like a 6k attack champion, you're like, wow, War Master's doing nothing now. My champion's hitting for like 400,000. And that is going to be the same principle here. If you're in the sort of, I'm trying to climb in Hydra, War Master's just going to be better. When you start getting to the point where you're like building that Giga ultra strong Michinaki or that really strong Rathalos, Helm Smasher is specifically single target because Hydra is obviously going to reduce your AoE damage. So someone like Cupidus gets very penalized by the Hydra passives. I think if the Suffering Head is out, he's losing 48% or something like that off the top of my head. So they will obviously, you're reducing your damage down. So therefore, even though you ignore defense, it's going to get punished still. Single target damage dealers with additional forms of ignore defense, Helm Smasher becomes quite a big difference. I think I'll be doing a specific video on this with all the maths so people can
perfect.
I've got I'm trying to build like a calculator that people can plug in their numbers.
When that goes live, I'll link it in the description for you guys too. Yeah, like I'll update it when it's live.
So it's build, progression, and then quantity of ignore defense. If you have a very strong build with a very strong area bonus, or not so much a very strong, but like 6, like I've got a few in there, so I've got like 6%, and you've got then lethal. The combination of all of them with a very strong single target, you could be looking at gains of 100% more damage. Okay. It's not small. It's actually big.
Okay.
As a working example, I did a test on the end of it, and I took my 6-star lethal Whisper into Shogun, and normally she would do a 3 160,000 per hit on the A3. One Helm Smasher proc took it to 300,000. So it's basically nearly double.
That's insane. Okay.
Because we're getting to we're taking these 13,000 defenses down to 2,000 defense, which is huge,
That's huge. Okay, that's great. Other than that, on Helm Smasher, I think the rule of thumb is probably if you're attacking champions, whether it be in the arena or whether it be in wave content, Helm Smasher, like on a seer, for example, right? You would go Helm Smasher, or would you go Flawless Execution? What would you go? Because we all know arena, Helm Smasher, nukers. What about on a seer? Where do you go there?
If you want consistency, Flawless.
Yep. And if you want to go...
If you want to kill the bosses, you go War Master. Okay.
I forgot what I go with. Let me take a look. Let me take a look at my seer. So you're saying never go... go with okay, I do have Flawless, so I take it all back. I'm good.
Again, I haven't really entertained the concept now that we've got this now that we've got the same thing about Helm Smasher is we've always assumed that War Master just helps killing a boss, but what if I've got Giant Slayer? What if I've got Helm Smasher? Sorry, because we've got I'm assuming people can have 6-star Crushing Rend seers. That's the best resource of essence in the game, right? That's the first thing you should ever spend your resource on is a 6-star seer. Because you've got 35% ignore defense from Crushing Rend, and you put her in lethal probably, so that's another 30%. 65%. If you hit Helm Smasher, and now you use even some area bonuses in Finite, then her A1 becomes true damage. Is that going to overcome 129,000 hits, which is what her War Master can be? It's curious now. I'm curious, but the modus operandi has always been if you want consistency and you need to raise your crit damage numbers up because you're in an early to mid game to late game early build, then Flawless will give you more consistency. Because what you don't want to have happen is Helm Smasher procs on 4 of them, doesn't proc on that last when you don't clear the wave. That's it's a horrible experience.
Okay. Well, I think we've debunked a lot of myths and misnomers about these 6-star or 6-tier whatever masteries, man. You've been incredibly invaluable with your advice. You're such a wealth of knowledge. I love having you on. We have a few minutes left here, time. I would love to maybe just go over a few favorites or maybe misunderstood other masteries out there, and I'll let you have the mic if you have any in mind.
Yeah, so there's a few that I would definitely highlight that people probably don't think about. Yeah. Wisdom of Battle.
Okay.
If you're building an arena champion, this becomes almost like an essential blessing. It's the only way to stop a Siffy spam. It's literally the only answer to it.
True.
Otherwise, you'll just get
it's a really good point. Yeah. Okay.
And it also pairs nicely with improved parry because generally you're going to take critical hit damage, so you get better damage reduction than blast proof. So I always tend to go down and get the Wisdom of Battle. It makes the mastery tree awkward, but it's the only way to stop Siffy from just sleeping you to death. And also Shadow Heal. Shadow Heal in that tree is very good for something like a Godseeker and Neri.
Yep.
Most people don't realize that the Sand Devil does heal. And every time the Sand Devil will heal, Godseeker and Neri will self-heal. So very, very handy.
And there's a lot of passive healers, obviously you could be going against whatever, Soul of the Drakes or Elva is really, really popular right now. Siffy, obviously. And you're getting a 6% of their max HP, of my max HP, every time someone else is healed, which is really insane. I've always loved Shadow Heal. I've always loved Resurgent too. Do you like Resurgent?
Resurgent basically destroys the concept of having debuffs in the arena before even Polymorph did, because we were almost we went on an adventure to try and make debuffers not deal damage. Someone like Romantu suffers from this because Romantu's base multipliers are so good. He just does too much damage, and 9 times out of 10 he'll place the debuff and in the same breath remove it because of Resurgent. So it's very strong for your keeping your champions are going to take a bit of damage alive. Most people should go down defense, blast proof, Resurgent, delay death. That's the standard keep my champion alive mastery setup. Shadow Heal on Ultimate Death Knight is the worst experience in life, I will say.
Don't do it. Don't share that, Saph.
Honestly, they need to do something about that.
Not everybody's going to do it. Anything? Okay, so we talked quite a bit about defensive, some of our faves there. Anything on support? I personally love, as long as I don't have a speed tune team, I love rapid response. I love putting my buffers in that. I mean, it's more dependable. If you have a champion with buffs and debuffs, you're better off going rapid response over arcane celerity because they can't be resisted, or affinity matchups and blah blah blah. So I love those guys. I obviously love the obvious ones like Lasting Gifts and Master Hexer and Sniper when I need it. Anything else on the support tree that you're a fan of?
Arcane Celerity is very good for Fire Knight Hard because it counts when you place a freeze and it gets instantly removed.
Yes.
Yes.
Good call.
So if you've got like Newt, he basically gets pretty much, because it's like 30% chance he freezes 3 times. On average, about one of them will proc him in a little bonus 10% turn meter fill, which is, you're scraping turn meter as much as you can in that content.
Just let me talk.
I've kind of stopped using Evil Eye.
Okay.
Because they seem to want to introduce more and more features that just destroy Evil Eye. There's so many Doom Tower bosses that Evil Eye is a nightmare for, so I just kind of stopped using it.
It's not like a standard come down Evil Eye, grab Master Hexter every time like it used to be a few years ago. Yeah,
it's
that makes
still
sense.
huge in early game, but it's just like when you start getting into like the Griffin, you're like, oh, now I have to go remaster everyone to get like Evil Eye out for my team, and it's a bit like cycling Amius. We all hated the fact that they didn't give us a free remastery. That's another one that's bit of a problem. Yeah,
well, Cycle of Magic to begin with, like that was the next one I was going to touch on, is I hear 2 schools of thought. A lot of people saying that like this is just a pointless, stupid mastery. It's unpredictable and whatever. And a lot of people also who say that no, this 5%, when it does happen, it's a game changer, especially through the course of a longer battle. Where do you fall?
Yes. Well, one of the big things about it is it doesn't work dependently on other sources. So for example, if you have a reflex and Cycle of Magic, they're 2 separate rolls.
It's 2 separate.
So you can absolutely roll cycle and reflex. I mean, I've got a Farrak in the Fat build for Fire Knight Hard right now that has a refresh ring, a Cycle of Magic mastery, 4 pieces of reflex, and 4 pieces of merciless. So I'm like, this champion is going to reduce his A3 so much, like, because essentially every single one of those can roll independently.
That is really cool. Okay. So again, really kind of like the discussion we were having about Helm Smasher on Hydra, it's like if you're building a reflex, or like if you're building a champion specifically because you want to reduce cooldowns, then sure, add it on, separate roll, better chance. Cool.
It's just more chance. Someone like Newt's A3, if you just only want his A3, you put him in Merciless, you put him in, like if you can get like 4 Merciless, 4 Reflex, because I don't really think you need the Ignore Defense necessarily because it's single target, it's much easier to get to your cap. Like you'll find that you'll get A3 back like on a 2-turn cooldown because you're just getting so many opportunities, and that adds huge value. It's massive amounts of damage. So yeah, absolutely. It's good if you want, like obviously don't put it for your clan boss teams if you can't afford breaks teams. Be careful, but it's very valuable.
Last question for you before we let you go. Arena nuker build. Obviously, there's going to be niche situations for every different, champion. So there's no one size fits all. But what is your favorite masteries to come down for? Because like for this video, I reset Inithwi Blood Twins. So this is going to be perfect for me in terms of rebuilding here. Like I go with, I go with Deadly Precision, come down to like Shield Breaker, come down Ruthless Ambush. If I have a CC champion, I'll go Opportunist, or then I'll go a Cycle of Violence if I don't. And then I usually come down to like Kill Streak and Helm Smasher as kind of the base of my Arena Nuker build. And then you can kind of build off that. Is that, first of all, as a base foundation, is that kind of what you prefer as well, or no?
Well, there's some considerations to have here. Obviously, Shield Breaker only works if there's a shield and if you're not ignoring shields. So if you're ignoring shields like Jaw Gate or something of that nature, then Shield Breaker's virtually worthless. I would also say as well, Ruthless Ambush, that's only if you can actually kill them in one hit. Like if they're Stone Skin, Ruthless Ambush is like a total waste because you're never going to kill anyone. So that's something in longer fights in Arena these days, you need more. I actually kind of like Single Out. It helps kill it off.
Okay, so you like coming down Heart of Glory Single Out instead of Ruthless and Shield Breaker and Ruthless.
9 times out of 10, the things you're struggling to kill are the revivers and the tanks, not the nukers. So like things like Ultimate Death Knight that might be sitting on 100,000 HP, those Duchesses that are sitting on 100,000 HP. If you bring it down, that's like 6% more damage. Single Out when they get low, that's 8% more damage. That's going to help you more than a one-hit wonder.
True.
Everyone should have the Cycle of Violence at every single opportunity. It's just so valuable. And then Blood Shield really is only for your Rotuses, your Mountain Kings, probably Narcissus, the new guy, Taras. Anyone who's got high HP is actually quite strong, especially on a Rotus when you start scaling his HP up, and the way that you build Rotus with a lot of flat
like an
HP.
Erix, or would you go like a Taurus? What about HP based, all HP based nukers like a Taurus and an Erix and stuff like that as well? Yeah,
absolutely. It's worth going for because you can link up to Helm Smasher then quite comfortably.
Yes.
You would take Opportunist on champions that require freeze, like Fortis. Like he needs fear.
Fear, yep.
So you might as well put it on him for 12% more damage. And really, Stoke to Fury can be good if you know you're going to take some debuffs, because it's just access to free damage. It's very, very good with Gurp Tuck. You should always take it if you're using a Gurp Tuck.
All right. Well, sounds great, man. I still kind of go in terms of my arena. Like what I tend to do is I try to pair a Shuzen the Valorous with an Ithwi Blood Twin, give the immediate turn, and then try to go ham and kill at least a Sun Wukong or somebody. So that's why I kind of prefer still the Ruthless Ambush. But you bring up some really good points on these longer battles, which it feels like is every battle nowadays. You're just going to get way more bang for your buck, you know?
Yeah. It just depends if you're going to kill him.
Yeah. Over the course of a battle, yeah.
When you look at this 8%, and in that example you've just given there with Sun Wukong, that Anithri is probably going to kill the Sun Wukong, whether he has that 8% or not.
True.
So then it's like, it's almost like you're committing, if you think of mastery as the same way you have a build where it's like, it's got a budget, you're looking at it going, is the budget that I spend on 8% for the first hit more valuable than the budget that I spend on something that I need to finish that I don't quite have enough more damage for? And that's kind of like where I look at it. It's like, well, I'm probably going to, you know, Anithri, if you give him Shu Zhen, he's going to kill that Wukong unless it's behind a stone skin. Unless there's like a
it's a good point.
It's a blood shield.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's a really good point. Because basically I'm sacrificing. I still have Single Out and Ruthless Ambush, but I'm sacrificing, you know, Whirlwind of Death or Life Drinker instead as well. But hey, I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours about masteries, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on, Saph. I've had like 3, I think, amazing collabs in the last like 7 days, and you are a great kind of finale, I would say, for my viewers out there. In case you missed it, we talked to Shinny a few days ago, guys, about Endgame Arena, and then before that, we talked to Boozer about free-to-play Endgame. Saph, thank you so much for coming on. Again, I'll link Saph's channel as well as any videos like as he releases them on the topics that we discussed in today's video. Thanks again, man. It was a pleasure.
Anytime. I really appreciate it. I hope I didn't let me say that again. I hope I didn't baffle everyone's brains with all the different concepts. It is a difficult game. I try to simplify it.
No,
but,
this is I want to have you on, and I'm sure I'm echoing the viewer sentiments. I want to have you on more often because it's just your wealth of knowledge, and I feel like it's not boring, and you just learn so much just talking to you. So thanks again, man, for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right, guys, thanks for watching till the end. And as always, take care, guys.